Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Jason Mackey's First 10, a quick hit podcast to get you ready for the day. Today is Friday, August 9th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we have Steelers football tonight. They open their preseason schedule against the Houston Texans at Acrisure Stadium. Pirates also dropped another heartbreaker, finished a 1-5 homestand, swept by the Padres. Going to take your questions on both of those things and maybe a few more. We'll see. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you that we're sponsored by the North Shore Tavern. You don't have to be a baseball fan to love it there. The interior is wall-to-wall Pirates. There are appetizers, entrees, cocktails, and, of course, steak and seafood on a sizzling lava stone. Open every day. The North Shore Tavern across from PNC Park is Pittsburgh's home for steak on a stone. Some frustration, right? There's no other way to put it. I went sort of deep into that yesterday. There's a piece on our website, basically how much can change in 8 days and why it changed and the decisions and all of those factors. I can't believe we're here right now talking about it after all the optimism that existed after the Houston series. But anyway, we're going to wade through that and so much more. Going to kick it off with this question from Cheryl at Serenade_AZ. Which current sports things are you most tired of talking and hearing about? Sid's contract, Brandon Aiyuk, or the Pirates, everything. I try not to. I never want to complain. Sometimes it slips out. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody wants to hear a sports writer complain, though. And I'll certainly never complain about talking baseball. I love that. You guys know that's my favorite thing, and just the ins and outs of it. Obviously in a different role, so trying to manage that, but never going to complain there. A little surprised about Sid's contract. I thought that would make sense, but as we've been seeing sort of trickle out, that doesn't mean it's not happening. Nobody's freaking out. It's probably a closer to camp thing. I still refuse to believe that Sidney Crosby is going to play for another team. I do think it's an opportunity missed, but so be it. And Brandon Aiyuk, yeah, a little tired of hearing about that, but that's okay. I think it's more how that has been reported, how it has leaked out, the drama attached to it, than it is, anything football related. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense from a football standpoint. I've written about this. I do have some concerns about the financials of it, but will it make the Steelers a better football team? Of course it will. All right, let's get to some more here. Chris Light, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Chris, at Mr. Chris L8. Pirates' latest skid is because of Oneil Cruz's poor defensive play at shortstop. How quickly has he moved to a new position, and what will that position be? So you bring up a good point about Oneil Cruz. Not a good game from him yesterday. Defensively, that play has to be made. I think probably what irks people more is him not hustling out of the box and staring at a ball. For all of his physical talents, there's so much else that becomes frustrating with Oneil Cruz. Maybe it's defense, maybe it's the strikeouts, maybe it's the just, random head in the clouds plays. I think some of that stuff the Pirates just have to live with. I think some of it we need to remember that he's a young player, probably an emotional young player. He doesn't always do a great job separating. If he has a bad day at the plate, separating it in the field, has a bad day in the field, separating at the plate, that sort of thing, tends to let things snowball on him. No, that doesn't mean, and they need his bat in the lineup. But given their situation, you're not going to sit him. But you bring up a good point, Chris, on where he plays and what makes the most sense. I've been asked about this a few times. This is how I'd go with Oneil. I want to let the rest of the season play out. Now, I don't want to definitively answer that question on August 9th, but you're asking, and I will give my answer in this snapshot in time. I don't think he can play shortstop at the major league level. I've seen enough. For a team like the Pirates, you need a sure-handed defensive shortstop. I would, this offseason, entertain with him the idea of moving to the outfield. I think you need to do that in a respectful and intentional way. I would bring up Fernando Tatis Jr. I would bring up what they have, the rest of their outfield, and explain to him, look, dude, you can be really good here, and try and say, this is the best thing for our team. If we want to win, this is the way we do it, and have that conversation with him. Now, maybe he improves over the final 2 months, and I feel differently about that once the season ends. I don't know. I hope I see that. That's the easiest point, but that's how I'd be approaching the Oneil Cruz situation. But right now, as we talk about, I don't think you can have him there. So, all right. Since we need to be looking toward 2025 now that the season is essentially toast, what should the Pirates consider extending Aroldis Chapman or re-signing him in the offseason? Can they really go into 2025 relying on Bednar and Holderman? Mike Anatori at Mike Anatori asks that one. Probably not, honestly. I don't know if Chapman would be interested in doing that. Think about that from Aroldis Chapman's standpoint too. He went to free agency this year in a team grossly overpaid for his services. why would he turn that down? He made $10.5 million this year because the Pirates were in desperate need of bullpen help. Didn't work out, but if you're Aroldis Chapman, aren't you going to, hold out and try to see what somebody might throw at you? I would. Now, that's a different discussion for the Pirates. Do they go into 2025 relying on Bednar and Holderman? At this point, I'd say yes. At this point, I'd also say they're going to look for internal improvement, Carmen Majinski, Kyle Nicholas, that sort of thing. And I don't doubt that they could go on the market and look for relief help as well. And maybe it does make sense for Chapman, but I don't think that's a deal that gets done right now. All right, more of your questions on the other side of our typical break from the Bradenton Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. Talk to you then.
Embrace the laid-back charm of island life while sinking your toes in the sand and discovering real, authentic Florida in the Bradenton area. Unspoiled beauty and pristine beaches, a vibrant waterfront downtown energized by local arts and culture, fresh Floridian cuisine with a flourish of rich history, and friendly locals ready to welcome you to this preserved paradise on Florida's Gulf Coast. Plan your visit today at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
Welcome back to First 10. More of your questions here on a Friday. Jim Hart brings up a good point. Should have brought this up with the other stuff, but how about flipping Chapman to the closer's role in Triolo, using him as a late inning defensive replacement for Cruz? Fine with that. Wouldn't argue with Derek Shelton if he went to Chapman in LA. I mean, this is a gigantic series against the Dodgers. Chapman obviously has experience in that role. David Bednar's had some problems. I think in some way, shape, or form, you need a late inning defensive replacement for Oneil Cruz at this point. You need the sure-handed defense, so I would not argue with that at all. Give me a second here to flip over to some other ones. Is Aiyuk good enough to warrant all the attention, contract demands, and trade compensation? He's had 2 1,000-yard seasons. He's also playing with a star-studded cast of skill players. He's very good, but easily not a top 5 wide receiver. Will the return on investment be worth it if we trade for him and pay him? Adam asks that at AK100-892. I think that's a good point, Adam. I do. I've heard from people who, think that Aiyuk is like a slam dunk, top 5, top 10 receiver in the NFL. I don't know about that. And to me, this isn't so much about Aiyuk as it is what you're paying to get Aiyuk and what you're giving up to get him. And I think that's why the Steelers have held strong about we're not giving up, first round pick. We're not giving up players that we really value. The contract demands, I don't love paying what he's done to this point. I don't love paying $30 million a year for that. And I do think that's what it's going to take to get something like this. Well, maybe with the Steelers, you can get something done a little bit less because he wants to play here. That's still a ton of money tied up in a wide receiver. It really is. The totality of their books, I don't know enough about what can be restructured, what can be moved around. If you can find room, I'm guessing that, Omar Khan feels confident enough in that. I think we've seen enough out of him in maneuvering the salary cap to make it work. But I get you. I get you that it's a lot of money for a wide receiver. All right, Bucks 2024 at JT Carr 76 asks a good one. I've been asked this a few times too, in various forms. Will Shelton be the manager in 2025? I believe he will. Plain and simple. I think this second half collapse would have to be ginormous for them to make a move. There's a lot of belief in Derek Shelton and Ben Cherington from the Pirates side of things. I know that's not going to be echoed among the fan base right now, but I'm relaying a message. Yes, vibes are bad. They're frustrating. They're hacked off, that they're playing poorly, all that stuff. But is that enough to fire Derek Shelton in the offseason? As of now, I don't think so. As of now, I think they fully intend on bringing Shelty back. Now, you have 48 games left. If you go, 10-38, that answer is going to change. If you see a bunch of, breakdowns, guys tuning out the manager, something like that, I think that's going to change. But I think it would take a heck of a lot for them to make that sort of pivot. We'll do one more question here before we call it a day. What do we want to do here? I'm torn. Roy Riggleman asks, have the Pirates waved the white flag? At Roy Riggle M51381. And I would say no. they're trying to win. Why would they wait? It's frustrating. And I was digging into some of these numbers for the piece that I wrote. They're not completely out of it. It's not over. It's just the hill is very steep at this point. And I think that's kind of why I wrote the Dodgers and Padres series. Both are just going to be gigantic pivot points. If you go 1-5 again on this trip, they're going to come home and, it's not waving the white flag, but you're going to look at it and see it is a long, long way off. Michael Henn at Penn State Mike asks also who will make the decision as to whether Cruz plays shortstop or another position in 2025. It should be collaborative. I don't think it's going to be any one person. I don't think Cherington walks into a room and said, "You're moved." Derek Shelton walks into a room and says, "You're moved." I don't think Oneil says, "I'm not moving," and they back off of that. Like, it should be a group discussion. Some of the people having input. I mean, obviously Cruz, Shelton, Cherington will have parts in that. Maybe even Don Kelly, Mendy Lopez, guys that have worked with Cruz, people offering input on it. It should be a group discussion. And honestly, the goal should be, what's the best thing for the Pirates? How do you win? How do you get the most out of that spot? How does Oneil best help the team? And, to me at this point, it's somewhere other than shortstop. We'll see what they do. All right. That does it for this week. I got to as many questions as I could. Thank you so much for all of the great submissions on Twitter. Love doing these. I don't think we're going to have first 10 for a lot of next week. I'm actually going on vacation for a little bit, heading to Ocean City, Maryland with my family. So going to dip away from this stuff. We'll get back into it. There might be an episode later in the week. We get back late Thursday night, but might just call it a week off from this stuff and try to get away before things really kick into gear. But thank you as always for watching. Again, make sure you like and subscribe. You can get this video and more from our other columnists and reporters at the Post-Gazette on the North Shore Drive podcast and YouTube network. And talk to you soon, guys.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.